Dear viewers, before we dive in, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because what happened to Evelyn could happen to anyone. Now take a moment to imagine this. You've spent your entire life working hard, raising a family, giving everything you have, and when your golden years come, all you want is peace, respect, and love from those closest to you. But instead, you discover the unthinkable betrayal, not from strangers, but from your very own blood. This is the story of Evelyn Harper, a 68-year-old widow from Omaha, Nebraska, a woman who thought family meant protection, only to learn that sometimes, family can be the very ones who hurt you most. Evelyn had lived 68 long years with one simple belief, that family was everything. She had built her life around it, dedicated her heart to it, sacrificed dreams, and carried burdens for it. And yet, in the twilight of her years, Evelyn would discover just how fragile that belief really was. Born and raised in the quiet suburbs of Omaha, Nebraska, Evelyn's life had been modest but full. With her husband, Thomas, she raised their only child, Michael. Together, they worked hard, scraping by but always making sure Michael had the opportunities they never did. Thomas worked at the post office for nearly 4 decades, while Evelyn spent her days shaping young minds as a part-time elementary school teacher. They skipped vacations, drove rusty cars, and patched leaky roofs themselves. Also, Michael could walk the halls of good schools, earn a degree, and start his life with a clean slate. Evelyn never minded. To her, sacrifice was love. But when Thomas passed away suddenly from a stroke, everything changed. The house that once rang with laughter became a tomb of silence. Evelyn's grief was heavy, her loneliness unbearable. It was then that Michael, her only son, suggested she move in with him and his wife, Jenna. "It'll be easier, Mom. You won't be alone. We'll take care of you," he promised. Evelyn, desperate for family warmth, agreed. Packing up her memories in boxes, Evelyn left the home she and Thomas had built for 42 years. She stepped into Michael's large suburban house, believing she was stepping into safety. At first, it felt like refuge. There were children's giggles in the hallways, dinners around a big table, and the hum of a household alive with energy. Evelyn felt useful again, needed again. But slowly, the cracks began to appear. The guest room Michael and Jenna offered came with an unexpected price tag, $1,300 a month. They called it her share of household expenses. Evelyn lived on a fixed income from Social Security and a small pension, but she paid it dutifully. After all, she didn't want to be a burden. Over time, though, Evelyn realized she wasn't just paying to stay, she was working to stay. She cooked every meal, cleaned every room, folded laundry, chauffeured her grandchildren to practice, and babysat while Michael and Jenna went to dinners and parties. Her days blurred into endless chores, and whenever she dared to rest, Jenna's voice sliced through the air. "Evelyn, could you do a quick load of towels?" Or, "Mom, can you watch the kids tonight? We'll be home late." This wasn't a refuge. This was servitude. One quiet Wednesday night, after another long day of housework, Evelyn sat alone at the kitchen table, sipping chamomile tea. The television flickered softly in the background. Then, the numbers of the Powerball jackpot appeared on the screen. Out of habit, Evelyn reached into her purse and pulled out her crumpled ticket. She compared the numbers once, then again. Her breath caught in her throat. Every single number matched. $53 million. For a long time, Evelyn sat frozen, the ticket trembling in her hands. The money itself was overwhelming, but what it meant was even greater. For the first time since Thomas's death, Evelyn had something she had thought she lost forever: control over her own life. As the night grew darker, Evelyn whispered into the silence, clutching the ticket to her chest. I'm free. The sun rose slowly over Lincoln, Nebraska, painting the sky in soft streaks of pink and orange. Inside Michael and Jenna's house, the usual morning chaos unfolded: children bickering over cereal boxes, Michael scrolling through his phone, Jenna sipping her coffee as if she carried the weight of the world. But Evelyn Harper, sitting quietly at the table, was not the same woman she had been yesterday. Overnight, everything had changed. She held the lottery ticket in her hands, carefully folded, hidden in her sweater pocket. Her heart beat steadily, her resolve stronger than it had ever been. Finally, she cleared her throat. I have some news, she said, her voice calm, almost too calm for the noise around her. Michael barely looked up. What's up, Mom? Jenna adjusted her mug, distracted. Evelyn straightened in her chair. I won the lottery. The room went still. The children froze mid-bite. Michael blinked, thinking he'd misheard. Jenna's mug slipped slightly, coffee sloshing over the rim. How much? Michael asked, his tone sharp, almost urgent. Evelyn let the words fall like stones. 53 million. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. Evelyn could almost hear their thoughts churning. The gears of panic, the flicker of greed behind their eyes. Then, Jenna recovered first. Her lips curved into a sugary smile, her voice dripping with false warmth. Oh, Evelyn, that's incredible. We're so happy for you. Of course, we'll need to sit down as a family and figure out the best way to manage it. Michael leaned forward, his tone rehearsed, condescending. Mom, don't get ahead of yourself. This is a big responsibility. Luckily, you have us. We'll help make sure you don't make mistakes. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. She saw it clearly now, the entitlement, the presumption that what was hers was automatically theirs. Her voice cut through the tension, steady as a blade. Support me? Like you supported me by charging rent to live in your guest room? Or by planning to move me into the basement when I became inconvenient? Michael stiffened, his phone slipping slightly from his hand. Jenna's smile faltered, her carefully rehearsed mask slipping. Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The weight of her words was sharper than any shout. For 2 years, I've cooked, cleaned, and cared for your children while paying you over $15,000. That's not family. That's exploitation. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the children sensed it, their small eyes darting nervously between their grandmother and parents. For the first time since moving in, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years: power. And she intended to use it. Later that week, Evelyn slipped quietly into the office of Charles Grant, her late husband's trusted attorney. The walls smelled faintly of leather and old books, the ticking of a grandfather clock filling the silence. Charles greeted her warmly, but his eyes softened as he saw the strain on her face. She told him everything about the rent, the chores, the disrespect, and now the lottery ticket that had thrown gasoline onto a fire already burning. When she finished, Charles sighed deeply. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. Sliding it across the desk, he spoke softly. Evelyn, Thomas anticipated this. He came to me before he passed. He feared Michael's priorities. He wanted to make sure you would never be left vulnerable. Evelyn's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was the deed to her old home, fully paid for, and documents revealing a savings account Thomas had built quietly over the years. Tears blurred her vision. Even in death, Thomas had protected her. Charles leaned forward, his voice steady. You don't owe Michael or Jenna a single thing. You never did. For the first time in a long time, Evelyn exhaled. Not with defeat, but with resolve. She had been underestimated, undervalued, and used. But not anymore. Not ever again. Smash like if you're still with me, and let's continue with our story. Word spreads quickly in small towns, and Lincoln, Nebraska was no exception. By the end of the week, Evelyn Harper's secret was no longer hers alone. The news had leaked, whether by loose tongues at the lottery office or whispers at the local diner. She didn't know, but one thing was clear. Everyone now knew Evelyn Harper was $53 million richer. By Saturday morning, a cluster of reporters stood on the sidewalk outside Michael and Jenna's neat suburban home. Cameras flashed. Neighbors lingered at the edge of their lawns, pretending to check their mail as they craned their necks for a glimpse of Evelyn. Michael, suddenly the picture of a doting son, ushered Evelyn outside with his arms stiffly draped around her shoulders. He waved at the cameras, smiling like a politician. "Yes, my mother is the lucky winner," he said proudly, pulling her close, though his grip felt more like a leash than an embrace. "We're making plans as a family. That's what matters most, family." Jenna baked cookies for the neighborhood kids. Her smile stretched too wide, too perfect. She gushed to anyone who would listen about how blessed they all felt. But behind those forced grins, Evelyn saw something else. Panic, desperation, greed. Inside the house, the tone was very different. At night, Evelyn would hear them in the kitchen, their voices sharp and urgent, carried through the thin walls. "The credit cards are maxed out, Michael," Jenna whispered fiercely. "The mortgage is behind. If she doesn't give us money soon, we're finished." "Relax," Michael hissed back. "She's my mother. She'll come around. Once she realizes how much we need it, she won't have a choice." Evelyn sat in her room, clutching Thomas's old deed papers to her chest. Every word burned deeper into her heart. She wasn't Evelyn the mother anymore. She wasn't Evelyn the widow. To them, she was nothing more than a walking lottery ticket. The pressure mounted daily. Michael began leaving investment brochures on the kitchen counter, casually mentioning hedge funds and real estate deals he wanted Evelyn to consider. Jenna slipped in comments over dinner about private schools, luxury cars, and bigger houses they could all enjoy together. Every suggestion came with the same expectation: Evelyn's money. But Evelyn didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, she began quietly planning her exit. With Charles Grant's help, she opened private accounts. She contacted the state lottery office, arranging for her winnings to be handled in trust. She even drafted plans for donations in Thomas's memory. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt something stir inside her. A sense of control, of quiet power. One evening, as she folded laundry for the last time in that house, Evelyn overheard Michael's voice drifting up the stairs. "Don't worry, Jenna. Once she signs the money over, we'll finally live the life we deserve." Evelyn's hands stilled on the basket of towels. A chill ran through her. Her own son, the boy she had raised with every sacrifice she could muster, the man she had trusted to give her refuge. He was waiting, no scheming, for her to hand him the keys to her freedom. Evelyn set the folded towel down and whispered to herself in the quiet of her room. Not this time, not ever. The Harper household had always gathered for Sunday dinner. It was a tradition Evelyn herself had started years ago, back when life was simpler, when Thomas was alive and Michael was just a boy chasing baseballs across the yard. Now, the tradition felt like a trap. That evening, the table was set with Jenna's finest china. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans filled the air with the smell of comfort. But Evelyn knew better. This wasn't about family. It was a performance carefully staged for one purpose: to corner her. Michael cleared his throat as the family bowed their heads for grace. His voice was solemn, rehearsed. "Lord, we thank you for family, for blessings, and for the abundance you've given us, especially the gift you've placed in my mother's hands, Evelyn's eyes flickered open mid-prayer. She caught Jenna's subtle smirk, the way her hand tightened around Michael's under the table. Dinner began, but the food was barely touched. Michael pushed his plate aside and leaned forward, his tone suddenly businesslike. "Mom, we've been talking, Jenna, and I think it's time we create a proper financial plan. With that kind of money, mistakes can be catastrophic. We need to move quickly before people start taking advantage of you." Jenna jumped in, her voice honey-sweet but sharp at the edges. "And of course, we'd never let that happen to you, Evelyn. We're family, but we need access to the funds so we can protect you. We've already drafted a few ideas with a financial advisor." She slid a crisp folder across the table. Evelyn didn't touch it. Her fork clinked softly against her plate as she set it down. "Protect me?" she asked quietly, her voice steady. Michael nodded eagerly. "Exactly. We'll handle everything. You won't have to worry about a thing." The words echoed in Evelyn's mind. "You won't have to worry about a thing." Promise wrapped in control. For a long moment, Evelyn said nothing. The room grew tense, the children shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. Finally, she lifted her gaze, meeting Michael's eyes head-on. "Tell me something, Michael. When I scrubbed your floors, cooked your meals, and raised your children for 2 years, who was protecting me then?" Michael froze. Jenna's smile faltered. "When you charged me rent to live in your spare room, when you whispered about moving me into the basement, was that protection too?" The silence was deafening. Michael's face reddened, his voice rising defensively. "That's not fair, Mom. You don't understand the pressures we're under." Evelyn cut him off, her voice firm, unshaken. "No, Michael. What's unfair is that I gave you everything I had. My time, my love, my labor, and still it wasn't enough. Now you want to take the last thing I have left, my independence. But let me make one thing very clear." She stood, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Her hands trembled, but her words did not. "This money is mine, not yours, not Jenna's, mine. And I will not sign away my freedom to satisfy your greed." Jenna's face twisted, her voice dripping with venom. "You're being selfish, Evelyn. Without us, you'd have nothing. Remember that." Evelyn's lips curved into the faintest, saddest smile. "No, Jenna. Without me, you'd have nothing." She left the table in silence, her steps steady, her heart pounding. Behind her, the stunned family sat frozen, their perfect dinner now a battlefield littered with truths too sharp to ignore. Evelyn climbed the stairs to her room, her mind already made up. The time had come. The plan was no longer just a dream. Tomorrow she would take the first step toward her escape. And this time she wouldn't look back. After the disastrous family dinner, Evelyn lay awake in her small upstairs room. The clock ticked past midnight, the house quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional creak of settling wood. She stared at the ceiling, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. For 2 years, she had been their servant, their safety net, their quiet victim. But not anymore. Tonight had made one thing clear. If she stayed, Michael and Jenna would strip her of everything, piece by piece, until nothing remained. The lottery hadn't just given her money. It had given her an escape. Evelyn sat up, swung her legs over the side of the bed, and reached for the manila envelope Martin had given her. Inside were the keys to her old house, the deed in her name, and proof of the bank account Thomas had left her. She traced her fingers over Thomas's name, whispering, "You knew I'd need this one day, didn't you?" By morning, Evelyn had a plan. She phoned Martin from the library, never from the house, where Jenna's nosiness knew no bounds. "I'm ready," she told him, her voice low but firm. Martin didn't sound surprised. Good. I'll handle the legal paperwork and arrange movers discreetly. You'll be out before they even know what happened. Over the next week, Evelyn played her role carefully. She still cooked dinners, still picked up after the kids, still smiled faintly when Jenna handed her endless chores. But inside, she was already gone. She started boxing her personal belongings. A few photo albums, her late husband's watch, the quilt her mother had sewn decades ago. Things that held meaning, not things Michael or Jenna could hold hostage. On Friday morning, Martin arrived with a moving truck. Evelyn told Michael and Jenna she had an early doctor's appointment. By the time they returned home, her room was empty, her closet bare, her scent vanished from the sheets. But she hadn't left silently. On the kitchen table, she placed an envelope addressed to Michael. Inside was a single note, written in her neat cursive. You called it protection. I call it control. You called it family. I call it betrayal. I will no longer live as your burden or your maid. Do not come after me, Evelyn. When Michael came home that evening and found the note, his fury shook the house. He crumpled the paper in his fist, his face red with rage. She can't just leave like this, he roared, pacing the kitchen. She owes us. After everything we've done for her. But Evelyn didn't hear his anger. She was already gone. She stood in the doorway of her old house, keys jingling in her hand, the smell of aged wood and roses drifting through the air. It wasn't just a house. It was freedom, waiting to be lived in again. She stepped inside, sunlight pouring through the dusty windows, and whispered, "I'm home." That night, she slept soundly for the first time in years. No chores, no rent, no whispered insults. Just peace. But Michael and Jenna were not done with her. They weren't going to let $53 million slip through their fingers without a fight. For a few blissful weeks, Evelyn enjoyed a peace she hadn't felt in years. She spent mornings tending the roses in her old garden, afternoons sipping tea on the porch, and evenings writing letters to old friends she had lost touch with. The house was quiet, but it was hers, every inch of it. No rent, no chores demanded, no footsteps stomping above her head. But peace never lasts long when greed is lurking. It began with the phone calls. First once a day, then 5 times, then 10. Michael's number lit up her phone screen over and over. She didn't answer. Then came the voicemails. Pleading at first, then angry, then outright threatening. "Mom, we need to talk. You can't just run off like this. You're being manipulated. That lawyer is filling your head with nonsense. If you don't pick up, I swear we'll come over there ourselves." And then one Saturday afternoon they did. The knock at her front door was hard, insistent. Evelyn peered through the window to see Michael and Jenna on the porch, their expressions sharp with frustration. Her stomach tightened, but she refused to let them see fear. She opened the door just wide enough to stand her ground. "Mom," Michael began, his voice tense but laced with fake concern. "What are you doing? This is crazy. You can't just walk away like this." Evelyn folded her arms. "I didn't walk away. I took my life back." Jenna stepped forward, her smile brittle. "Evelyn, think about the children. They need stability. You're moving out like this, it's selfish. What kind of grandmother abandons her family?" Evelyn's heart twisted, but she stood firm. "Don't you dare use those children against me. I've raised them, cared for them, loved them as if they were my own. But I won't be blackmailed by guilt anymore." Michael's mask of patience cracked. His voice rose, his hands clenched at his sides. "You can't handle this kind of money, Mom. You'll waste it. People will scam you. You need us." Evelyn's reply was quiet, but it cut deeper than shouting ever could. "No, Michael. I needed you when your father died. I needed you when I cried myself to sleep in your house. I needed you when you charged me rent to live in a room smaller than a closet. And you weren't there for me, not as a son, not as family. Jenna's face twisted with anger. Fine. If you won't listen to us, maybe a judge will. Don't think we won't fight for guardianship if we have to. The law protects people your age from bad decisions. The words hung in the air like poison. Evelyn's chest tightened, but her resolve only hardened. Try it, she said, her voice sharp as steel. But you'll lose. I have Thomas's trust, Martin's counsel, and the truth on my side. And if you drag me into court, everyone will see exactly what kind of people you really are. For a moment, Michael looked as if he might explode. But Jenna tugged at his arm, whispering through clenched teeth. They turned and stormed off the porch, their footsteps heavy with frustration. Evelyn closed the door, her hands trembling. She leaned against the wood, her breath unsteady. They wouldn't give up, that much was clear. But neither would she. This was no longer just about money. It was about dignity, freedom, survival. And Evelyn Harper was done being anyone's victim. The confrontation at her doorstep had left Evelyn shaken, but not broken. She knew Michael and Jenna would not stop. Their greed had eaten them alive, and they were desperate enough to drag her name, her freedom, even her sanity through the mud if it meant getting their hands on her fortune. But Evelyn had one thing they underestimated: courage born from years of sacrifice. She met with Martin the very next day. His office smelled faintly of old books and polished wood, a place where Evelyn always felt grounded. They threatened guardianship, she told him, her voice steady but tired. Martin adjusted his glasses, his expression calm. Let them try. We'll get ahead of this. I've already drafted the paperwork to protect your assets under a living trust. We'll also put your wishes in writing, publicly if necessary. Evelyn, you don't have to hide anymore. You can stand tall. And so she did. A week later, Evelyn stood before a crowd of reporters at the local courthouse. The morning sun glinted off the marble steps as cameras clicked and microphones clustered around her. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers had gathered, curious about the woman whose story was rapidly spreading through town. Dressed in her late husband's navy blazer, Evelyn looked every bit the picture of quiet strength. She stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. My name is Evelyn Harper. I am the rightful winner of the $53 million lottery jackpot. But I am not here to talk about money. I am here to talk about dignity. For 2 years, I lived in my son's home, paying rent, cooking meals, raising children, and cleaning floors, all while being treated as a burden instead of family. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scribbled furiously. Evelyn continued, her voice unwavering. When I found freedom, they tried to take it away again. They threatened to control me, to declare me incapable of making my own decisions. But hear me now, I am not a burden. I am not incapable. And I will not be silenced or exploited by anyone, not even those I love. The applause began slowly, then swelled into thunder. Reporters shouted questions, but Evelyn only raised her hand, signaling that she had said enough. That night, headlines flashed across television screens and newspapers nationwide. Widowed lottery winner stands against exploitation. Mother calls out greedy son in public statement. Dignity over dollars. Evelyn Harper's fight. For Michael and Jenna, the fallout was brutal. Neighbors turned cold. Whispers followed them everywhere. And Michael's employer quietly distanced themselves from the controversy. Their carefully built facade of the perfect suburban family crumbled under the weight of truth. Evelyn, meanwhile, flourished. She moved forward with her plans, restoring her old home, planting new gardens, and funding scholarships in Thomas's memory. She donated generously to local shelters and set up a trust for her grandchildren. not through their parents, but directly, ensuring the children would one day have opportunities without strings attached. And most importantly, she lived on her own terms. When asked in an interview what she had learned through it all, Evelyn smiled gently, her hands folded in her lap. People say money changes you, but I don't believe that. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them. And what I saw was the truth. Painful as it was, it set me free. She paused, her eyes glistening. Family is supposed to mean love, but sometimes family means betrayal. And when it does, you have to choose yourself. And I did. Her story spread far beyond Des Moines, touching hearts across the country. Not just because she won the lottery, but because she proved that no amount of betrayal could break the spirit of a woman who finally chose dignity over sacrifice. Dear viewers, Evelyn's story is not just about betrayal. It's about reclaiming dignity. What about you? If your own family betrayed you, would you find the strength to stand up like Evelyn did? Tell us in the comments. And if this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more true life stories.